Today I'm going to explain why I have decided to become woke, because after many years of contemplation I've decided that the woke movement is the right movement to follow. It's compassionate. We show compassion to people that are trapped in the wrong bodies and women walking around with big massive penises. I mean, what a horrible experience it must be to be a woman walking around with a big massive penis. So we believe that anybody can be anything that they want. If a woman with a penis believes that she's a woman, then obviously she should be allowed to use a women's bathroom because she is actually a woman. I mean, they have period poos, don't forget. I mean, these people having period poos and blatantly women, and anybody that thinks anything else is totally intolerant, and they should be arrested and cancelled. And we don't want to see these kind of people, anybody who disagrees with these ideas, because we're all about inclusivity and diversity. That's why we tolerate absolutely everything. We will tolerate any kind of belief system, and if you believe that you're a bloody female version of the Easter Bunny or something, then then obviously we would support that 100%. Obviously we would. Obviously that's just a compassionate side of us, I suppose. So we support absolutely all forms of diversity, and we tolerate absolutely everybody and everything except for Christians, obviously, and facts, and anybody who disagrees with us. But other than that, we believe in full diversity and tolerance of all belief systems. And we hate offensive jokes, obviously. We hate words, because words can be so violent sometimes, and people get hurt with words. So therefore, we always say, if you haven't got anything nice to say, then really you shouldn't say anything. But despite that, I still do believe in full freedom of speech and expression for everyone in the world. I mean, it doesn't matter what you believe, you should be allowed to voice, to have full freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and the right to speak without being locked up. Obviously you should be allowed to do that, obviously, except for Christians and intolerant people. Again, they shouldn't be allowed to do it, but everybody else should. The rest of us tolerant people should definitely be allowed freedom of speech and freedom of expression. So that's pretty much the gist of what I believe. Now I'll probably go into it a little bit later, a little bit more on what I believe, because now I feel like I actually do believe in real freedom. I think I was misunderstanding what freedom meant before. But before I go, I just want anybody to I just want to mention, I've been watching HBO's absolutely brilliant The Last of Us season 2, and I was nearly in tears watching it, and I just know that Ellie is going to be an absolutely brilliant dad. I can just see it coming. But yeah, thank you very much anyway. I'm out. Yeah, today I want to further explain my new woke beliefs, because I've been, like I've explained in my previous video, I've been woken up by the mainstream media and by the entertainment industry. I'm fully woke now, and I'm on board with all the wokeness. And there's a question going around the internet I want to address, which is, what's more dangerous, a bear or a man? Which one would you rather be stuck in a room with, one bear or one man? If you was a female, which one would you choose to be stuck in a room with? And obviously to me it's an absolutely stupid question, because obviously the answer is definitely a bear, because a bear is proper cute. I mean, there's no way a bear is going to hurt you. It's just way too cute and cuddly, and they wave at people, and they're just like big giant puppies. And polar bears, even them, they're just too cute to hurt you really. And you could just run up to it and start cuddling it and lie down with it, and it'll look after you and protect you. So definitely I'd rather be stuck in a room with a bear than any sort of a man. if I was a woman. Obviously I'm not a woman, so it's not really up to me to say, but I just look at it like this: how can something as cute as a polar bear be dangerous? But when you look at men on the other hand, I mean, have you seen some of the stuff that men actually write on Twitter and Facebook, and you know, the fight in the streets and stuff? You never see polar bears and grizzly bears fighting over a football match. I mean, Dahmer was a man, you know, Jeffrey Dahmer. Well, I think he was a man. I don't really want to assume his gender, but I'm sure Jeffrey Dahmer identified as being a male. So yeah, definitely I think I'd rather be stuck in a room with a bear rather than a man. But if I could choose how to have a bear or a woman with a penis, I'd probably choose a woman with a penis, because, you know, women with penises are stunning and brave, and, you know, and they're usually super tolerant of everybody. So yeah, it depends on the situation. I think preferably I'd rather be stuck in a room with a woman with a penis than a bear or a man. But, you know, if it had to come down to it and I had to choose out of a bear and a man, I'd probably choose a bear, be stuck in a room with a bear, because men are so dangerous. And, you know, sometimes, you know, they've got big sharp knives on them sometimes and stuff as well. So, you know, I definitely wouldn't trust a man, you know, whereas a bear, you know, what's a bear gonna do? It's just gonna cuddle you. But, you know, I think the problem with today's society is all this masculinity, you know, kids listening to shit like Andrew Tate and gangster rap and shit, you know, when they should be, you know, they should be spending the time listening to more feminine music, like Celine Dion or something. And, you know, they watch men's football, they don't watch women's football. Women hardly get paid anything when they play football, when men get paid millions. And that's mainly because of the patriarchy and the simple fact that everybody is just an absolute sexist pig. So yeah, but I'll go further into it later anyway. Thanks for watching. Today I'm going to look at diversity. Well, more realistically, I'm going to look at the lack of diversity in some towns and cities in the United Kingdom. I come from a very diverse city, so when I travel around certain towns, I'm always surprised by how, you know, backwards they are. I mean, there isn't no diversity. I mean, what is a place now without diversity? I mean, you know, you go around some towns in England and it seems to me like they're just refusing to let go of culture, their own history and traditions. I mean, you know, they're like desperately clinging onto them. And, you know, the far right obviously hate diversity and they use it as an excuse to say racist things on the internet. But I don't hate diversity. Me personally, I believe that we should have a total open borders policy and take in absolutely everybody. I mean, and if people don't like it, then they should just leave. I mean, there shouldn't be racist white trash, you know, far right Nazis. You know what I mean? They shouldn't be that, should they? They should just leave the place and find somewhere that is alright for them to live. I mean, in my opinion, there's plenty of room here. There's lots of countryside left yet. We could turn the whole place into just one giant concrete jungle. I mean, I think that would be absolutely brilliant, to be honest. I mean, like I say, I'm a very tolerant person, but I won't tolerate anybody defending their own community or their home land or family or anything. I mean, obviously not, you know. But, you know, and to be fair, a lot of people are moaning about Keir Starmer. I mean, I think Keir Starmer is doing an absolutely brilliant job so far. I mean, the way he's just silenced his opposition is really impressive. I mean, it's just the way he's, you know, thrown people into prison for nothing more than writing something on the internet is, in my opinion, absolutely magnificent. And that should do it. That should now fake news should stop, because Keir Starmer's took control of the situation, and all news is going to be backed by people like Keir Starmer and what you can and can't say. And to me, that is just absolutely fantastic. And you know, anybody who is in prison for anybody that is in prison for going against Keir Starmer, in my opinion, it's probably their own faults, because it's their own faults for being far-right, racist thugs. Do you know what I mean? They shouldn't be Nazis, and then, you know, they wouldn't be in prison. In my opinion, prison isn't harsh enough. For me, I honestly believe that they should just be exterminated. And, you know, it's as simple as that. I mean, you should be exterminated for being such intolerant scum, in my opinion, and thinking that you're better than everybody else. Just instant extermination, no questions asked. And, you know, I'm glad that the internet is deleting these people and stopping these people from speaking freely on it. And I think it's absolutely brilliant that London and Birmingham are so diverse. I mean, I walk around Birmingham sometimes and I honestly think, you know, you could forget where you are sometimes. You could honestly think that you're in the Caribbean or Africa or the Middle East. I mean, obviously not a nice part of the Caribbean, Africa or the Middle East, you know, some sort of slum in the Caribbean, Africa or the Middle East. But you could honestly believe that you're not even in England. And to me, that's the great thing about diversity. For this video, I'm going to look at global warming and Just Stop Oil, and I'm going to explain why I believe that global warming is real and very dangerous, and why we should all just stop using oil. I mean, to start with, I mean, global warming is getting so dangerous now that it literally set LA and Hollywood on fire earlier on this year. I mean, the sun was so hot that it actually set the earth on fire. I mean, and that was all caused just because of global warming. If it wasn't for global warming, then that probably wouldn't have happened. I mean, obviously I'm a vegan, so I don't contribute towards global warming as much as meat eaters, because obviously I don't eat meat, and, you know, the cows and the sheep are in the fields and they're farting all over the countryside and they're polluting the air, and it creates methane. And, you know, if people would just stop eating these animals and just stop consuming dairy products and go onto a full vegan diet like people like me, then we could really just, you know, get rid of all the cows, kill all the cows, you know, get them out of the countryside and stop them from farting and polluting the air. And we could do that, you know what I mean, if people just become vegan like me. I mean, animals don't have to die for me to eat at the end of the day, because I'm a vegan. So, you know, I know animals are dying for me to eat, obviously, except for a few million insects and thousands of rabbits. But I mean, other than that, you know, and, you know, what can a tiny little insect contribute towards the ecosystem anyway? I mean, literally nothing. And I know that, you know, my farts produce methane, especially mine, because I'm a vegan, so obviously I'm probably producing a lot of methane. But I think a small amount of methane into the atmosphere in exchange for my brilliant ideas and compassion is really a pretty small price for the earth to pay. You know what I mean? Whereas cows haven't got these brilliant ideas and they haven't got the compassion that we've got. So, like I say, there is a downside to everything, but everything has got its benefits as well, and you just have to balance it out. I mean, like I say, global warming is getting so bad now that if we're not careful, I'm pretty sure that in the future people are just going to start spontaneously combusting, and then nobody will be laughing then. That won't be a laughing matter, will it? And all of our cities are going to be underwater, which, you know, obviously it's got its benefits if our cities go underwater. I mean, it would definitely create more diversity. There'll be thousands of species of fish and sea creatures swimming around the country, which will be nice, you know, to see that kind of diversity. So, you know, it has got its benefits, but it will also put a halt to all the pride festivals and stuff that I like to take part in. So, you know, everything, in my opinion, it needs to be stopped, despite the fact that it might produce more diversity, and it would be nice to see all different fish swimming all over the country. I mean, that would be absolutely brilliant to see that kind of diversity. But you know, it's a concept, but it's also got a downside to it, unfortunately. I mean, in my opinion, the only thing we can do now is to actually just block the sun to stop global warming from getting any worse. I mean, if you think about it, what could possibly go wrong if we block the sun? I mean, the sun is the leading contributor in the world to global warming. You know, the sun produces more global warming than anything else in the world, and yet we just let it sit there in the sky, burning the place up, when we could just get somebody like the brilliant Bill Gates to just block it and problem sorted. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Yeah, so to continue with my newfound welcome and explaining why I'm now woke, and today I want to look at internet censorship. And you know, a lot of people moan about internet censorship, a lot of people don't like it, but I thank Google for internet censorship, and I thank Facebook for internet censorship, because, you know, internet censorship prevents a lot of right-wing, a lot of far-right thugs from actually speaking online, and that is a good thing, even if sometimes they are actually saying facts and things that are true. You know, it's still good that them taken off the internet, because, you know, they say really hurtful things sometimes. So in my opinion, yeah, internet censorship is absolutely brilliant, but I don't think there's enough internet censorship, if anything, to be honest. I mean, I hate it when I wake up in the morning and I'm eating my granola, and, you know, and I have to read horrible stories on the news and on Facebook. You know, in my opinion, everything should be censored. Like, all these horrible things that are happening all of the time, we should just censor it all, and then we'd all just live in a world where all we ever hear is good news, and surely that would make the world a much better place. You know, get rid of all the bad news and just have good news repeated over and over again. I think that would make the world a much better place, and then we could all follow people that believe the exact same things that we believe, and we could all agree with each other. And, you know, there'd be no arguments. You know, it's that's how I'd like. I mean, that's why I like to stick to the people who I listen to, because I like to have my beliefs reinforced. I mean, some people say that you should listen to both sides of the argument in a debate, but in my opinion, listening to both sides of the argument is an absolute waste of time. I mean, for a start off, it takes literally twice as long to listen to both sides of the argument. I just listen to the side, I just choose the side that I want to be on, and I listen to their side of the argument, and I just go along with that, and that's how I come to my conclusions. And, you know, a lot of people claim that we need alternative media and we need people questioning the narrative of the mainstream media, but I don't believe that we need any of that at all. I mean, I think the mainstream media are trustworthy people. I mean, they wear really nice suits, they don't swear, and I trust them wholeheartedly. You know, I don't understand why people would believe that they aren't trustworthy people. I mean, saying the media lie is a conspiracy theory. I mean, it's like saying the government lie, just a conspiracy theory. I mean, you can go through all of the mainstream media, you can go through all of the newspapers and all of the news reports, and you'll never find a story about the mainstream media lying, and that's probably because they don't lie. It's got to be because they don't lie. And same with the government, you'll probably never find a story about the government lying in the mainstream media either. So, you know, they obviously never lie. But tolerant people like me, we like to listen to tolerant people. You know, we don't like to listen to intolerant people, even if sometimes they are just using logic and facts. I mean, facts, they can fuck off. I mean, I hate facts. If anything, facts should be cancelled, you know, because facts are very uncaring and they're so hurtful and cruel. And to be honest, they contradict pretty much everything that I believe. Yeah, so to continue with my awakening, today this video is going to be about abortions, which is a very touchy subject. Now, obviously, I believe that it's a woman's body, so therefore it should be the woman's choice. But there is a lot of people that don't think like that. There's a lot of outside interference from conservative groups and Christians that don't like abortions, and there's a lot of debate about abortions. What age should you be allowed to have an abortion up to? At what point does a pregnant woman, at what point does that baby become an actual living human? And at what point does that living human's human rights begin? So there's a lot of questions about abortions, but I don't believe, me personally, that it's up to men to tell women what they can and can't do. I mean, I believe that the patriarchy has been doing that for long enough, and I don't think it should have anything to do with the patriarchy on what a woman can and can't do. If a woman wants an abortion, then surely it's got nothing to do with any man, and it should definitely have nothing to do with the patriarchy, unless obviously that man has got a vagina or is pregnant, which is obviously possible. But unless that is the case, then obviously it should have nothing to do with any man. I mean, it sounds like I'm pro-abortion, but I don't actually like the term pro-abortion. To me, pro-abortion sounds offensive. It makes it sound like, like I love abortions, and like I just want to go around giving abortions out or something like them sweets. So I don't like the term pro-abortion. I think it's a terrible term. I find it offensive. I prefer the term pro-choice. The choice to do what women want to do with their bodies. And you've got to remember that sometimes an abortion is actually the only way to actually avoid an unwanted birth. I mean, it's literally the only way. I mean, obviously excluding not having sex in the first place or using contraception, but sometimes women are a bit too sozzled to think of things like that. So abortion is sometimes the only way out of it. But for me, like I say, I don't think should be anything to do with a man on what a woman does with her body. It's her body, and therefore it's her choice, and all the man is required to do is support her decision and pay child support up until the child is 18 years old, and that's it. Like I say, for me, it's an obvious one. It's, as women say, my body, my choice. I mean, obviously you could apply that logic to drugs, but drugs kill. Yeah, so to continue on with my newfound wokeism, I mean, I'm pretty worried about what's happening with Israel and Iran at the moment. I worry about Ukraine because, I hope the British government don't forget to carry on funding their war against Russia. I hope these other things don't overshadow it. I know we've already spent billions on that war, and we've also spent billions in taking in refugees that war has created, but we can't stop now because Putin is definitely on the back foot. I mean, he's been on the back foot since the very start of the war. I mean, I know he has because I watch the BBC all the time, and he's got cancer and he's been losing his mind, so we've definitely got him sweating. And I remember the BBC saying years ago that he's nearly done, so he must be really desperate by now. He must be just about holding on, desperately. So, like I say, I'll stand with Zelensky, and I'll stand with Ukraine, and I welcome refugees. I welcome all refugees, and I stand with the Ukrainian people. And like I say, I welcome refugees. I mean, obviously I don't welcome them to my house. I mean, if any refugees come to my house, I'll phone the police immediately, and if the police don't hurry up and get there, I'll probably smash their heads in with a metal bar. So, but I do stand with Ukraine, and obviously I won't fight for them. I mean, obviously somebody else can do that. I'm not even Ukrainian, and I've barely got a clue what's even going on. So, but I do stand with them, and I will definitely post nice supportive things on Facebook and Twitter showing everybody that I stand with Ukraine. I mean, and I believe Zelensky is great. I mean, he doesn't wear a suit like all the other politicians, so he's brilliant. But like I say, I stand with Ukraine. I mean, despite the fact I've got very little idea of what's actually going on. I mean, from what I can gather, you know, apparently it started when Putin lied and he said that the Ukrainians were committing genocide in Donbass, and then obviously Putin claimed that Ukrainian officials were under Western control. I mean, how ridiculous is that? As if the Ukrainian officials were under Western control. What does he think it is, like a James Bond movie or something? So, but you know, don't worry, he's losing. I know he's losing because the BBC have told me he's losing, so, you know, he's desperate, and, you know, if we carry on fighting, it's only a matter of time before we beat him. And, you know, I don't trust Russia at all, and I definitely don't trust the Russian government and Putin. I mean, you know, they're oppressive and they're opposed to freedom of speech. I mean, you could say what you like about us in the UK, but we support freedom of expression and freedom of speech. I mean, you're not going to get locked up in the UK for simply saying what you believe to be the case. I mean, that's never going to happen. I mean, you don't get locked up for using freedom of speech in the UK, obviously, except for far-right thugs like Tommy Robinson and Lucy Connolly and, you know, all the other far-right thugs that we've got locked up at the moment. But they don't really count because, you know, they're animals. So to continue with my newfound wokeness, I want to look at Hollywood, because Hollywood is absolutely brilliant in my opinion, and I love how progressive and forward-thinking Hollywood actually is. I mean, you know, I love the way that Hollywood and the entertainment industry constantly point out political injustices, and the way that they promote these forward-thinking and progressive political ideologies is, you know, great. And they also represent the LGBTQ community, and obviously that is also brilliant. You know, when I used to watch old television back from the 1990s and stuff, like from when I was young, you know, you'd be watching these horror films like, you know, like The Evil Dead and, you know, whatever you watch, Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. And I always used to just think, you know, that these films would be so much better if they just had, you know, a bit of gay or lesbian sex, or, you know, just at least a lesbian kiss or a gay kiss or something. You know, it was, you know, terrible back then. There wasn't no representation and there wasn't no depictions, but Hollywood have come along and they've nailed it. They've sorted that problem out, and, you know, I can't wait to watch the new Snow White movie. I'm waiting for it to come out on DVD. It looks absolutely brilliant. I mean, I know they haven't used no real dwarfs to play the dwarfs this time, but that's because obviously it would have been offensive and create negative stereotypes to do so. Well, at least that's what Peter Dinklage said. But it's funny though, because I'm sure Peter Dinklage has played a dwarf in every single film I've ever seen him in. But that's probably just because he plays such a convincing dwarf. So, you know, I think what's offending him is the fact that the dwarfs are depicted as living in caves, and he says, you know, it's backwards to have dwarfs playing dwarfs that are depicted as living in caves, which, you know, it is backwards. It's quite offensive to think that dwarfs are living in caves. I mean, obviously dwarfs don't live in caves. That's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I don't really know where dwarfs do live. I'm sure they live in mushroom kingdoms or something, but definitely don't live in caves anyway. That's offensive to say that they live in caves. But, you know, a lot of people don't like modern day Hollywood. They moan a lot about the race swapping and gender swapping all the time, and, you know, that's mainly because, let's be honest, they're just sexist, intolerant pigs, and racist, intolerant pigs as well. That's why they're moaning about stuff like that. I mean, I hate the way that all these superheroes are white, you know what I mean, like Batman and Superman, white men, and Spider-Man. You know, they're all just a bunch of white men every single time, just a white man. I mean, why can't they just get somebody like, you know, Whoopi Goldberg to play Batman? I mean, you know, that would create a bit of diversity, and, you know, it would represent black women on television as well. and I'm sure it wouldn't do anything to the viewing figures. I bet Batman fans would absolutely love it. Whoopi Goldberg's a brilliant actress, you know, totally underrated, and you know, for me it would be absolutely brilliant to watch that. But I don't mind them swapping, you know, genders and races for movies. I mean, I've always said I'd love to watch a Romeo and Juliet, you know, with the Mountain playing Juliet and Peter Dinklage playing Romeo. I mean, for me that would be absolutely brilliant. So to continue with my newfound wokeness, I want to talk about being offensive and being offended. You know, because since I've woke up, I've learned the importance of not offending people. You know, before I woke up and before I became woke, I used to just carelessly blurt out facts with no consideration of people's feelings or culture. You know, like, I had no empathy for what they believed. If a fact dismissed it, you know, I used to blurt it out, you know. And, you know, if I used to be approached by a trans woman, you know, then I used to say horrible things, like, you know, I used to say things like, you look like Hulk Hogan's got stuck in a bloody makeup factory or something, like, you know. But now I don't behave like that, because trans women are women. I mean, you know, we should always remember that trans women are real women, you know. So if a trans woman approaches me now, I'm not fazed at all, and, you know, I just go along with it, and I make sure that I don't offend her. You know, like, I look at it like this. I mean, a cis woman can make your day, but trans women make your whole week, if you know what I mean. So, and, you know, for me, I think it's offensive to treat a trans woman like she's actually a man. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, what really offends me is when people say things like they wouldn't sleep with a trans woman. It's like, why the fuck not? Why wouldn't you sleep with a trans woman? It's because you're a transphobic cunt, isn't it? That's all it is. I mean, Keir Starmer has, I mean, and he's not gay. You know, it's not gay. Sleeping with a trans woman is not gay, because a trans woman is a woman. So, you know, I don't understand the problem, and it really does offend me. I mean, I find quite a few things offensive, but that really does offend me. But, you know, I'm offended by stereotypes as well, and racist jokes, and old-fashioned cartoons and television, and Donald Trump, and Christians and conservatives, you know, logic and facts. Do you know what I mean? These things I find very offensive, and I'd like to see a movement to try to cancel a few of these things, to be honest. But, you know, I'll tell you what I find most offensive. I find it most offensive when I'm offended and people don't acknowledge that I'm offended. Like, it's not important that I'm offended, but it is important that I'm offended at the end of the day, because I have the right to live my life not being offended. I don't like walking around all day being offended by everything everybody's saying, you know. But if I am offended by something, then the fact that I am offended should, you know, give me extra rights, and, you know, maybe even a little bit of applause, because, you know, I get offended on other people's behalf sometimes, because, you know, I'm just such a social justice warrior and stuff, and I just, you know, if somebody says something offensive to somebody else, I actually get offended myself standing next to that person. I get offended for that person sometimes. It's just the sort of person that I am. But yeah, like I say, I mean, you know, we have to do better, and we have to try to make sure that we don't offend people. So this is today going to address toxic masculinity. I mean, I've been watching Adolescence on the brilliant Netflix, and, you know, it got me thinking about toxic masculinity, to be honest, and it's something that really does offend me. Toxic masculinity does. I mean, it is very offensive, and to be honest, I blame people like the Tate brothers, you know, Andrew and Tristan Tate. I think they're responsible for a lot of this toxic masculinity. I mean, I think these kids, you know, especially these young men, I think they're sitting around, you know, them them watching Andrew Tate, you know, he's surrounded by like 10, 20 half-naked women, and you know, these kids, they think it's cool. They think it's cool that Andrew Tate is surrounded by all these half-naked women. The fucking bastard. You know, they're impressed by you, so they aspire to be like Andrew Tate. And these poor women, you know, I'm sure that they tried to escape if they could, but they probably drank too much champagne, you know, so they're stuck there with him, and you know, they're paid to go on the internet and find old men to exploit, you know, old lonely men, so they can exploit them and take money off them, and then they get exploited by the Tate brothers. I mean, it really is probably enough to make your heart weep. I mean, it is heartbreaking what happens, but you know, I'm sure that they'd escape if they could, but obviously they can't, because like I say, they're naked, and they've probably drank too much champagne, you know, so they can't escape. It's out of the question. But I don't understand why these toxic males, like the Tate brothers and Russell Brand as well, I mean, why do they always find themselves surrounded by half-naked women? I mean, I'm a good person, and I know I've only ever seen one naked woman, and she had a penis. But, you know, it's not just Andrew Tate. I mean, like I say, Russell Brand is toxic, Henry Cavill, I've heard he's toxic, and Tommy Robinson, I mean, obviously, he's also toxic. But it's good to see that the music industry is taking steps to move us away from toxic masculinity. I mean, I think if you look at the 90s and the early 2000s, you know, a lot of people was listening to like Guns N' Roses and System of a Down and Eminem and DMX. You know, it was all full of toxic masculinity. You know, I'm kind of glad that they've moved away from that now, and now they've made it so music is less toxic and there's less toxic masculinity in it. I mean, now even the males are feminine, and you know, in my opinion, that is brilliant. I mean, it's brilliant that they've taken the toxic masculinity out of the music industry. I mean, I know some people complain about everything, and they say that, you know, the music industry is hypersexualized now, and it's all just women, you know, dancing around in their underwear and shit, like basically doing the same as Andrew Tate, just selling sex, except Andrew Tate's at least selling it to lonely adults, whereas the music industry is probably just selling sex to kids, according to some people. But I don't see it like that at all. I mean, that's ridiculous to me. But you know, obviously there's a few bad eggs in the music industry, like Diddy, you know, but it's mainly filled with, you know, brilliant, progressive-minded people. Do you know what I mean? Like Chris Martin out of Coldplay. I mean, he's absolutely brilliant. I mean, some people, you know, again, criticise him, call him a champagne socialist and a hypocritical wanker. But I mean, I don't. I think he's absolutely brilliant, and you know, he gets a lot of stick. I mean, I think he's great. I mean, I know some people again say that his voice sounds like something between a cross between Mickey Mouse and Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, but you know, he's got a brilliant progressive mind, and for me, him, Coldplay and Chris Martin are just absolutely brilliant. Today I'm going to talk about Donald Trump, because people like me, us progressive woke people, we hate Donald Trump. You know, I mean, we hate everything about him, and you know, we ask ourselves, why does he keep walking about with orange skin? And you know, he's a racist, hate monger and a womanizer, and he's another one of them, like Andrew Tate and a lot of others. He's full of toxic masculinity, and to me, I think he's basically a Nazi, and him being in power has made the world a much more dangerous place. You know, so these Trump voters, well done, you've made the world a more dangerous place. I mean, Joe Biden was brilliant. I mean, he never caused any trouble whatsoever. You know, he used to just go to meetings and have a little nap in the meeting and then go out. He had no idea what was going on, so how could he cause any trouble? But obviously now Trump's won. You know, he's not falling asleep through the meetings and stuff. And when Trump did win the election, had the strangest feelings and the strangest urges. I mean, I just had this really strong but sudden urge to just begin to film myself and start screaming and crying down the camera, which I did. I did it, like, you know, and I put it on YouTube, but I deleted the video because everybody was laughing about it, like, all these far right thugs thought it was really funny. But yeah, I don't see what was funny about it. I mean, why can't America vote somebody progressive like Keir Starmer, you know, like Labour in Britain? I mean, mind you, Keir Starmer did annoy me a little bit recently when he said a woman is an adult female, you know. But I do think he said that out of desperation, because I think his hands were tied, and, you know, it's literally took him years to answer that question anyway, so he did everything he could. But eventually, like, you know, somebody used one of our worst nightmares against him, and that's logic, and, you know, he had to concede to the logic, you know. Like I say, there's a few things I'd like to cancel, and logic and facts are a couple of them things. I don't like logic and facts. But to me, like I say, Donald Trump is a dangerous man. He's a warmonger, and we're in big trouble now. He's in power, like I say, he's a complete warmonger, and that's why he refused to go to war with Russia. You know, I think he's probably Putin's puppet. Do you know what I mean? I think he's under the thumb, and, you know, Putin is actually controlling Donald Trump, and that's the only reason why we haven't gone to war with Russia. I mean, I'm all for peace, but not when it comes to Russia and Putin. There can be no peace with people like Russia and Putin. We have to fight that war, and I know that we have to fight that war because I've been watching the BBC, and the BBC has told me that we have to fight that war, you know. But in my opinion, America should have voted for Kamala. I mean, I think she was absolutely brilliant, and it would have been amazing to see the first ever black female president. I mean, or is she the second? I can't remember, but it's one anyway, I can't remember. But that would have been brilliant, and I would have been so proud. And I'm sure that if Kamala Harris won the US election, then I'm sure that by now she'd have probably already had Russia beat. Do you know what I mean? Russia would have already been beat. Well, either that or she'd have caused World War III and a chain reaction of nuclear attacks, but I doubt that was going to happen. She'd have beat them. So to continue with my newfound wokeness, I want to speak about modern men. Because, to be honest, I spoke about toxic masculinity in a previous video, you know, people like Andrew Tate and Russell Brand, you know, and all these other toxic males and the mentality that they've got. And I didn't actually give any credit to modern day men, because in my opinion, modern day men are so much better. And a lot of these modern day men have now decided to completely move away from toxic masculinity, or masculinity of any description, to be honest, and I think that's absolutely brilliant, you know, that they've done that. And, you know, the fact that they've abandoned toxicity and masculinity and misogyny is great. Everybody who looks at that situation should say it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, now, it's not actually that rare of an occurrence now to see men walking around cities and towns, you know, dressed in really nice feminine clothing, you know, and they look after the hair and they look after the nails and they have pedicures and they, you know, they look after themselves, and, you know, they even wear a face full of makeup and everything like that. And I just look at it and I just think that is brilliant. That is so progressive, you know. And I know some people would say, you know, that these men are not manly, and, you know, they're not actually real men. Some people would say they're not men in the head. You know, like, they haven't got the mentality of the traditional old-fashioned men. But I say bullshit. I mean, why aren't they real men? What, they're not real men because they're in touch with the feminine side. You know, just because they're wearing a pair of tights and a dress with makeup, that means they're not a real man. I mean, obviously they're real men, they're proper men. But people say, you know, that if there's a war on, that we'd be fucked because of these new modern men. Do you know what I mean? That they would struggle to fight for us. But, you know, you can't send people to war when they're worried about breaking nails and, you know, their hair falling out of place and the makeup getting smudged. You know, but I don't agree with any of that. I mean, like I say, I think these modern men are brilliant, and, you know, men from previous generations have been intolerant and toxic and full of misogyny and rowdy and loud. You know, a bunch of football hooligans and all this stuff, you know, trashing the place. Whereas these modern men, they're not like that at all, you know. They're more like women, and it's progressive. it's nice to see men behaving more like women. I mean, I'd love to see a world where all men behave like that. I mean, just imagine how brilliant it would be to live in a world where all men, or at least the vast majority of men, dress and behave like Boy George or Sam Smith. I mean, you look at these, especially Sam Smith, you look at him and you just think, only a real man would do what Sam Smith does. I mean, it's so brave, and he is absolutely stunning. But I know some people say that he's a freak and he looks like something out of Hellraiser, but I don't agree with that. Like, I mean, like I say, I think Sam Smith is a brilliant artist, and he's definitely in touch with his feminine side, and it's not a mental illness, obviously not, it's actually art. Sam Smith is an artist, and these modern day men are absolutely fantastic. So to continue with my newfound wokeness, I want to talk about weight shaming, because I find weight shaming to be absolutely toxic, and I don't believe that anybody should be judged by their weight. And to be honest, I find all jokes that reference weight offensive and toxic as well. I don't think there should ever be a time for a joke that references somebody's weight, and I don't think that we should ever laugh at somebody's weight. And to be honest, I even think that medical terms like morbidly obese, to me, morbidly obese sounds cruel and offensive. I mean, it sounds like you're describing some kind of big, sweaty, slimy pig creature, do you know what I mean? And in my head, when you say morbidly obese, I automatically picture, jaw and a snotty nose on a pig-like creature. I picture something like Piers Morgan. To be honest, that's what I picture when you say things like morbidly obese. I mean, I wouldn't say Piers Morgan's morbidly obese, but he's definitely morbidly something. Probably morbidly grotesque and morbidly disgusting is a more accurate way to describe him, but he's definitely morbidly something anyway. But I don't believe morbidly obese should be used as a term to describe people. I mean, I think things like chubby or round or plump, differently sized, is probably a better way of describing people. And as for Piers Morgan, I'm not a big fan of Piers Morgan because I find him to be a transphobic, intolerant, far right scumbag, to be honest. But I did agree with everything that he was saying during the COVID crises, during the lockdowns, when he was exposing the selfishness of anti-vaxxers. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. I mean, shame on the anti-vaxxers at the end of the day. I find anti-vaxxers to be selfish people, they risk everybody else's lives because they've been misled by, conspiracy theories and online influencers, them stupid people that didn't take the vaccine. So I mean, for me, I think pharmaceutical corporations are absolutely brilliant. And without them, COVID would have probably been absolutely unstoppable and would have probably been in a mess now. Would have probably still been walking around, with snotty noses and coughing constantly. So, like I say, I think the pharmaceutical corporations was a godsend during the COVID crises. And, I know some conspiracy theories say that the vaccines might have negative side effects, and there's been studies linking them to heart attacks and strokes and even psychiatric reactions, and mental breakdowns. But, I think that's all a load of nonsense, to be honest, because, I've taken 25 jabs during COVID and I'm alright. I haven't suffered from anything like that. I mean, and, I know the vaccines are safe anyway because, the king of the mushroom people and his pet frog told me there so they told me there's no negative impacts on, psychiatric conditions that's caused through the vaccines. And, the king of the mushroom people and his pet frog know all of the world's secrets, so I know it's safe. So to continue, I'd like to talk about rainbows, because there's nothing that I love more than walking around British cities in the United Kingdom, you know, walking around cities and towns and seeing rainbows and rainbow flags everywhere that I look. You know, you see them in banks and supermarkets and charity shops, and you see them in travel agents, and you know, you even see them in, you know, outside churches and things now, which, you know, is marvellous. And you know, they're on television as well, and they're in video games, I mean, and even in sports, you know, football captains actually wear rainbow armbands now to show their solidarity with the LGBTQ movement, which, you know, is great, it's brilliant. And a lot of councils now have replaced zebra crossings with rainbow crossings, which I think is just absolutely fantastic. I mean, it looks so beautiful, and you know, it's fun for the children, and it represents the LGBTQ community. I mean, I know, you know, some people are going to moan about it, some people moan about everything and they don't like it, and they say things like, isn't there a better cause that you could fight for, you know, like ending child labour, or exposing corporate exploitation, or even addressing, you know, the unfair and uneven wealth distribution that leads to the vast majority of the world's population living in poverty. You know, couldn't they expose something like that and fight a cause like that? But you know, I disagree completely with that. I mean, I think the oppression of the LGBTQ community is a very important cause to fight. We have to stop it, and we have to give them equal rights to the rest of us. And when I say equal rights, I actually mean, you know, more rights than the rest of us. But you know, I walk around the cities, like I say, and I look at these flags everywhere. Everywhere that you look, there's a rainbow flag, and you know, I think it's really marvellous, like I say. And I know you've got, again, these right-winged extremists, you know, homophobic, transphobic fascists, and they say things like, you know, gay people are actually overrepresented in media and in the entertainment industry. They state facts and things like, you know, but at the end of the day, we don't care about facts, so you might as well just keep them to yourself. And then you've also got some conspiracy theorists on the internet that draw comparisons to the rainbow flags being similar to the Nazi flags that was everywhere all over Nazi Germany during World War One and just before World War Two and just before World War Two. So, but I disagree with that completely. I think that's just a stupid conspiracy theory. I mean, is there any similarities at all between the two? One of them is a pretty lovely rainbow flag with loads of different colours on it that is about diversity and inclusion for everybody, you know, for all people except for Christians and obviously people that don't agree with us and intolerant people. But other than that, it's for them. It's for, you know, for the rest of us, at least. When a swastika was never about that. I mean, a swastika is about persecution, and it's about superiority, people feeling superior, and racism. So for me, there's no similarities at all, and people who try to say that there is are just conspiracy theorists. But like I say, there is always people on the far right that do talk like that, and you know, and like I say, they keep saying things like, you know, why not expose Christian persecution in Islamic states and in China, or you know, expose corporate child slavery used by the exact same companies that are promoting these sick and twisted ideologies. But I don't agree with any of that. I don't know what they're even talking about. But I'd like to see, like I say, I know some people think that it's too much with the flags, but I disagree. I think we should have more. I think it's a shame that we can't paint a whole city the colours of a rainbow. That would be truly marvellous. So to continue, I'd like to talk about Bill Gates because, in my opinion, Bill Gates is absolutely brilliant. I really do love Bill Gates. He's such a charitable, kind person, and he's donated so much of his wealth to fighting issues like global warming and, poverty and vaccinations, spreading vaccinations out. I mean, he is fantastic, and his vaccinations really did save the day during COVID. It was literally like a superhero, a bit like Batman, but better. To be honest, I mean, I think he's just absolutely brilliant, Bill Gates is, and but despite his brilliance and despite his kindness, you've still got this group of people that are always attacking him, and they're bringing up his past interactions with Jeffrey Epstein, and even the news ambushing him, when they get him on the news, they ambush him and start asking him about Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, I say shut up. I mean, honestly, Bill Gates is brilliant. He shouldn't have to explain anything that he's ever done. I mean, he only had a few interactions with Jeffrey Epstein anyway, didn't he? I mean, well, not a few, quite a lot, but that doesn't mean nothing. Obviously it doesn't. I mean, just because he's associating himself with the world's most famous human sex trafficker, that doesn't reflect badly on Bill Gates himself, the person. Of course it doesn't. But, like I say, look at the vaccines. He sorted COVID out. His, philanthropy is absolutely marvellous. And I know his critics say things like he's just passing money around from, vaccine companies to charities which he owns and stuff like this. But I disagree. I mean, when I hear people criticise him like this, I just think to myself, what have you ever done to help? Do you know what I mean? You've never done anything to help. Bill Gates he's given millions. I mean, people who criticise him have literally never done anything at all to help. The proper, like, really clutching at straws, like them trying to expose something evil inside him that just isn't there. They say things like, why should we trust Bill Gates with the future of our children? When he was associated with the world's most famous human sex trafficker and paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. But, like I say, he might have met Jeffrey Epstein, he might have met him many times, which he did, according to the New York Times, but that's got nothing at all to do with us. I mean, he's super progressive at the end of the day, and he talks about climate change, and he talks about, cows farting in the countryside. I mean, I think he's brilliant. He's actually invested in an Australian climate technology, which actually plans to actually reduce the methane from cows' burps. What I mean? That's what I mean. He's just absolutely fantastic, and people still criticise him, and they say things like he gives off evil vibes, and they find something, psychotically scary about him and weird, like he's an exaggerated version of Mr. Burns out of The Simpsons or something. I mean, but I don't agree with any of that. I don't think Bill Gates is scary or weird. I think he's absolutely fantastic. So to continue, I'd like to talk about toxic femininity. I mean, I don't even believe in toxic femininity. I believe that it's a conspiracy theory that's been made up by toxic males in response to toxic masculinity being a subject spoken about, and they feel exposed and they feel weak, and therefore they've had to come out with their own response, and weaponise it and accuse women of being toxic as well. I mean, I think it's a fact that women are much, much less toxic than men. And even if you was to come across a toxic woman, she's probably only toxic because she's been made toxic, by the toxicity of a toxic, boyfriend and ex-boyfriend or something, and his toxic masculinity. I mean, you have to remember that women are actually victims of an oppressive system that is designed to work against them which is itself controlled by the patriarchy, which is then controlled by toxic males and toxic masculinity. I mean, Sigmund Freud had some interesting theories about women, old-fashioned theories about women, and one of them was that he claimed that women think on two different levels, and there's two different people basically. The conscious level and the unconscious level. The conscious level is a level that she presents to the world, and in this level she genuinely wants calmness and peace and stability, and she wants to be in a long-term, a long loving relationship with long-term commitments. But on an unconscious level or a subconscious level, that isn't what women actually want. They actually crave danger and excitement and fun, and usually attract towards violent, strong, confident and powerful men. So, I don't like these kind of ideas, because I believe that they make it sound like it's women's fault when women get themselves into a mess. I mean, Freud also claimed that all women go through a stage of life where they actually envy the fact that a man has a penis, and they actually wish that they had one. It's called penis envy. And I found this quite interesting, so it got me doing a little bit more research into what women do and what women want and on relationships. And when I was doing extra research, I found some really interesting data, like the fact that 50% of women have a backup plan even when they're in a committed relationship. Now, I think that's just really smart, to be honest. I mean, that's intelligent. And 49% of women admit that they've cheated more than once while in a committed relationship, a committed and serious relationship. So, that's nearly half of women, 49%. So it's 1% from half of women that admit that they've cheated more than once while being in a committed relationship. And and then you've got to add to that the fact that 100% of women lie, and you come to the conclusion that the chances of your relationship being absolutely fucked are about 199%, unless you're willing to live in absolute ignorance and live a complete lie. But you do have to feel sorry for women, because all they want is a tall, handsome, rich, strong man, do you know what I mean, who's compassionate, caring and soft and considerate and honest and funny and smart. But you don't get a lot of men like that at the end of the day, so they have to lower the standards. So what I want to do now is I want to actually choose my pronouns, because I've been woke for quite some time, and as you can see, I passionately support the woke movement, but I've never actually chose any pronouns. I still use the same pronouns as what I was born with, which is obviously he, him and is. And for me, it's always sounded like it fits, but I'm starting to get a little bit bored of it, and to me it sounds a little bit predictable and old-fashioned and really just boring. Like I say, it sounds really boring, so I want to change it to something a little bit more interesting, and something that might get a little bit of a reaction out of people when I tell them my pronouns, because I want to start listing my pronouns on job applications and things like that as well, you know what I mean, on all my social media. I think that's what I should start doing. But like I say, him, his and he is my pronouns at the moment, and I find them too old and boring and traditional, to be honest, and I'm not going to use she or she and her either, because again, they're very old-fashioned and boring, and unfortunately I don't think they really fit my description either. But one that did catch my eye was they, them. Now, I thought they, them was good. I really like that. I mean, definitely my favourite one so far. It sounds really cool, like, here they are, and they're leaving. It sounds progressive, and then, you look up and there's only one of them. I mean, that sounds really great. But another one that's caught my eye is it and its. I mean, they sound great as well. I love it, and here it is. I think that sounds brilliant. When you walk into a pub, here it is. It sounds really cool. It sounds like you're some sort of monster or dinosaur or some sort of indescribable monstrosity that nobody's even got a word for. I mean, it's brilliant, and I think most people, I think more people should start using that pronoun. And then there's us and we're, and the great pronouns as well. Like, we're just going to sit down here, but again, you look up and there's only one person. I mean, that's great. There's a lot of pronouns now. The more I look, the more I find. I'm actually on a website now that's listed 111 different pronouns, and to be honest, that's a lot. That's more than I thought, to be honest. That's probably a little bit too much. That's getting silly. But, it makes it really hard choosing what pronouns to get. I mean, I like the Z and theirs. I mean, that's fantastic. But I've done a little bit of research into that pronoun, and apparently it's a gender neutral pronoun, which is good, because I like it when my gender's neutral. But, at the same time, it's usually used by non-binaries. So I'm not non-binary, so unfortunately I can't really use that pronoun. I mean, even the word what is a pronoun. I mean, that's quite good, isn't it? There what goes. I mean, that sounds great. Actually, I really do like that. I mean, I just googled it to get a little bit of help, and according to Google, the best pronoun for me to use as a cis male, as a straight cis male, is actually him and his. Any other pronoun, could be considered offensive apparently, and I'm, like I say, I'm a straight cis male, so unfortunately for me, Google says that I can't change my pronouns. The only pronouns that describe me is his and his, and to be honest, I'm pretty cheesed off about it. As I continue my journey through my newfound wokeness, I am constantly amazed and surprised about how diverse and brilliant the whole LGBTQ community actually is. For me, it's brilliant, and I've learned so much through listening to people that are woke, because they're more sociably aware and they're more caring people, and they're just better people, in my opinion. And I've learned so much from listening to these people, like I say, and I feel like so knowledgeable about it all now. I mean, recently, I was trying to choose myself some new pronouns, a new set of pronouns I wanted, but in the end I decided to just stick with what I've got, to be honest. But when I was doing a bit of research to choose my pronouns, I was trying to choose what pronouns fitted me best. I learned so much about gender, because I used to just think, gender was just male and female, obviously. I think that's what most people believe, especially as children. But, it's not. There's a huge spectrum of different genders and different types of people that live. And it's a surprisingly diverse spectrum as well. There's so many different kinds of genders and so many pronouns now that really it's getting hard to keep up. And considering there was only two, if you go back 20 years ago, maybe, there was two. Now there's just like literally hundreds, and it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, obviously we all know the two most famous genders, which are male and female, which in my opinion is boring. But then there's the genders that we don't know as much about, like non-binaries. Now, non-binary people are people that don't identify as exclusively male or female. I mean, that is brilliant. So then you have gender fluid individuals. Now, gender fluid individuals are people whose gender shifts and fluctuates over time, so they don't even know what gender they're going to be in the next couple of months, let alone the next week, because I'm gender fluid. So the change from gender to gender, which I found so fascinating and interesting. So these are gender fluid individuals, and then you've got agender, which are individuals that don't even have a gender. So you've actually got a gender for people that don't have a gender. This is some real progressive stuff. And then you've got bigender, which are individuals that identify with two genders. I don't know what two genders, I don't know if that just means male and female, or if they can identify as, agender and gender fluid at the same time. So you could say your gender fluctuates, but you don't even have one. That is fantastic. And I know some people might think that this is confusing, but this isn't really that confusing when you learn about it. It's just really interesting. And then, like I say, you've got the bigenders, then you've got demi-boys and demi-girls, which are people that partially identify with male or female gender. So they don't fully identify as it, they're not fully male or female, do you know what I mean? They partially identify with either male or female gender. And then you've got pangender, and pangenders are just crazy because they just identify as all genders. So that's brilliant. Pangender is fantastic. And like I say, this is so progressive. Me personally, I'm obviously a straight cis male. My girlfriend is a female, hence the fact, that I'm straight. That's why my girlfriend is female. But she does have a penis, obviously, and she's got really hairy hands and big feet. To be honest, I'm thinking about breaking up. But she'll probably just beat the shit out of me again, so help. So as you know, I'm woke, and as you also probably know, every single woke person in the world supports Palestine, and I don't really know why that is, but we just do. We all support Palestine. I don't even know what's going on in Palestine and Israel, but I still support Palestine. That's just how woke I am. I just support Palestine. But like I say, we support Palestine and we support the LGBTQIA movement, plus, by the way, I forgot to put the plus. We support all that as well. And I think the reason, that we support these things is because I'm just so progressive. These ideas are so progressive that I can't help but support them, to be honest. And my favourite one at the moment, my favourite movement is the Gays for Gaza and the Gays for Islam movement. These are fantastic. And I think the reason that gay people tend to feel like they should defend Gaza and Palestine and Islam in general is because they feel as if they're all victims of the same systematic oppression. Granted, obviously gay people haven't been attacked by advanced military weapons and had 4 generations lost, but they do only get 1 month a year to support their culture, and many people still don't like trans people using the toilet of the preferred pronouns, which I find completely regressive, to be honest. But you got these crazy far-right conspiracy theorists that claim that this woke movement is just being used as some kind of distraction, so we all sit here arguing about nonsense like what a woman actually is, despite the fact that Genesis is one of the most ancient books that you can still read, and that tells you clearly what a woman is. But they claim that despite that, we're just sitting there arguing about nonsense, like when these politicians are just going around doing whatever they want. Do you know what I mean? And we're not taking no notice at all. But I'm not interested in all that. Politics bores me. I find it really boring, and I'm not interested in politics at all. But, I don't mind jumping on political bandwagons of political ideologies that I don't understand beyond a surface level. I don't mind that so much. But when it comes to actually being involved in politics, I've got no time for it at all. And, maybe I should. Some people would probably say that you should know and research who is promoting their ideas and ideologies that you believe, and why are they promoting them? What is the motivation behind them? Especially, I suppose, when them ideas contradict many things that have been considered, facts for thousands of years in some cases. But I don't have time to do all that. I ain't got time to fact check everything. That's why I just go on the internet and I just use fact checking websites to make sure that they usually agree with everything that I say. So that's why that's what I do. I use fact checking websites. I ain't got time to do all that sort of thing myself. But I mean, like I say, I'm really proud of Gays for Gaza, and I think it's a really fantastic idea, and I think it shows how tolerant that the woke movement is, that we would tolerate Islam. Because people always say to me, you moan about Christianity and claim Christianity's intolerant. If you was an Islamic state, they'd probably stone you to death for any sort of for any kind of an homosexual act. But we don't mind. We still tolerate it, even though that's what they do. There is very little logic to anything that we believe and think. Today I want to talk about Ireland, because I think the Irish should be absolutely ashamed of themselves, and they've proven themselves to be, far right thugs really. You know what I mean? They're claiming that there's no room in Ireland to take in any more immigrants or refugees, but I totally disagree. I know Ireland's a small country with a relatively small population, only 5 million people live there. But at the end of the day, I think they're just being really selfish here. I mean, I think there's plenty of room left in Ireland. And what to say about the Irish? They say them stupid, don't they? And before you say anything, it's okay to joke about the Irish, because the Irish are white. So obviously I'm allowed to joke about white people. And that doesn't offend anybody. And the Irish have never suffered from any sort of oppression or anything like that from anybody anyway. I mean, everybody likes the Irish. So but like I say, they're really embarrassing themselves with the way they're behaving in Ireland at the moment with the immigration. I mean, they're moaning, they're saying there's more men, they're all young men coming in, all these immigrants are young men, and there's not many women or children among them. But to me, that's totally irrelevant and just an excuse to moan. Same when they keep moaning about the fact that Ireland is a Christian country with strong traditional Catholic beliefs that have been there for generation after generation, and now due to this government, them just flooding the place with Islam, and Islamic people. But I don't know what they're moaning at. I don't see the problem. I mean, I'm sure that if things were the other way around, the Muslims would happily accept the Irish into their culture and there'd be no problems at all. I'm sure that they would do the same for us as what we have done for them. And all this immigration is, the Irish look at it as a good thing anyway, because it's going to create cheap labour, which is really great for the cities and the towns and the villages in Ireland. I mean, when you think about it, cheap labour would be brilliant, because now, people will get less money for working, which means they can open more businesses there. I know some people say it's a double-edged sword, and it'll take down wages for the average citizen in Ireland as well. But there's just always something to moan at with some people. I don't know what they're moaning for sometimes, honestly. I just don't. I look at it like this land is my land and this land is your land, and I genuinely believe that the Irish should be ashamed with the way they're reacting to it. They're moaning because they're saying that some of the towns and the villages have seen populations near enough double due to immigration and everything like that. I don't see what the problem is, to be honest. I don't know what they're moaning at. Ireland has got plenty of room for much more people, and they should be ashamed of themselves. I find them to be selfish, intolerant, racists, far-right extremists, if I'm honest. And like I say, I'm sure that if things were the other way around, and if it was the Irish needing to be moved, the Islamic country would accept them instantly. And the Irish moan as well. They say that Christians and Islam have been fighting wars against each other for thousands of years, or hundreds of years at least. And maybe it's dangerous to put them both on the same island together, but it's not. I mean, obviously there's nothing wrong with doing that. So for this section, I'd like to talk about perverted men, these disgusting perverted men that are constantly staring at women when women try to just get on with their lives. I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, I watch a lot of YouTube and a lot of videos on YouTube exposing it, and there'll be women sometimes, and they'll be going to the gym, and obviously they'll be wearing tight leggings and stuff because it's easier to train in them sort of clothes. And they'll set a camera up and start filming themselves in the gym, and they'll be like, they'll be streaming it on OnlyFans, so that they'll have a couple of hundred fans watching them and everything like that. But then as she's working out, she turns around, and all of a sudden there's just some disgusting, sweaty pervert staring at her in the background. I mean, it's not fair. Do you know what I mean? And it's not fair because you're putting her off. You're putting her off her workout. You're putting her off doing her workouts, and you're putting her fans off as well, and they're all paying to watch this. And these perverts that are paying to watch you are being distracted by the pervert that is getting the free show, the free live show. I mean, it's absolutely terrible. No wonder these women are getting absolutely pissed off with you. I mean, I know some people would argue and say, well, can't you go and do it somewhere where it's not a public place? But I mean, why should they? I mean, we're entitled to our privacy at the end of the day. She's streaming in front of a few hundred followers, and you've got perverts in the background who just can't leave them alone. I mean, but these men are disgusting, like I say. I mean, you see these women walking around cities and towns sometimes, and they're just walking around minding their own business, and obviously it's nice at the moment, it's July, so they're not wearing a lot of clothes, but then you just get these men just staring at them. It just, what's wrong with them, man? They're just absolutely perverted. I mean, and these men use excuses like, they say, well, if she wasn't dressed like that, I wouldn't stare at her, or if I was dressed like that, then people would be staring at me as well, and if you don't want to be stared at, then dress sensibly. And just because it's red hot doesn't mean that you have to walk around semi-naked at the end of the day. If you actually look at how hot countries dress, most countries don't dress. Most hot countries actually do cover the skin. But that's all irrelevant to me. Like I say, she can dress however she wants, and she has the right to walk around any town or city, anywhere, without being distracted by people staring at her. I mean, I don't believe that women are doing this sort of thing for, I don't believe that women want to be stared at like this. But, and I know people are saying, well, if they don't want to be stared at, why don't they dress a little bit more conservatively? I mean, you don't have to show every single part of your body possible just because it's red hot to keep yourself cool. Like I say, the hottest countries tend to cover the skin and still keep themselves cool by using, cooling materials. But that's all irrelevant to me. Like I say, she can dress up however she wants, and she's still got the right to walk around towns without having perverts staring at them at the end of the day. I mean, and that's for these people who say that it's actually perverted to be walking around cities and towns dressed like that, actually looking for that attention. Then, I disagree. At the end of the day, it's hot. The weather's hot, and she wants to keep herself cool. There's nothing wrong with that. At the end of the day, if she wants to walk around the town totally naked, then she should be allowed to do that without everybody staring at her as well. I mean, but people are just absolute perverts.